Okay, so I'm back at Isandlwana, my fourth visit, third time I've made a film here, but this is going to be new, this is interesting. I'm looking at new stuff, doing things differently, so stay with me. So I've actually just walked here all the way from Rorke's Drift, which is down there. It was a good walk, so do watch my last video which chronicles that journey. It's getting windy as I get up on the hillside, but imagine it's the morning of the 22nd of January 1879 and you're a young officer, you're in Zikali horse. You're chasing small scattered groups of Zulus in the hills north of the camp. You think you're the hunter, and then suddenly you come over the brow of the hill and you realize that the hunter has just become the hunted. Along here, to your shock, are 20,000 Zulu warriors bivouacked here since the night before and waiting to attack. They're very close to the camp. It's unbelievable that they were able to get such a large force so close. So I've come due north of the camp. It's a bit windy, and that's a high point called Ngwebeni Hill, which is a good spot to come and have a look at the Talehane spur. With news of the approaching Zulu advance, 2 companies of the 1st 24th under Kavai and Mostin were sent along here, the Talehane spur just north of the camp. They saw elements of the right horn advancing across there and opened fire, inflicting some casualties on them. It wasn't clear at this stage exactly what was happening. So I'm stood at the foot of Isandlwana mountain now, and I'm looking slightly to the northeast. You've got the conical hill over there, and then if I pan slightly to the left, there's what's known as the escarpment. And I think over by where that road is more or less where the rocket battery came to grief. Let's go have a closer look. So just after 12, the rocket battery under Major Russell had come along from Isandlwana, along and gone then to the south side of the conical kopje there, trying to catch up with Colonel Durnford. But it was hard going for them along the foot of this escarpment. They couldn't see what was happening. All they could do was hear the sound of gunfire somewhere over there. Of course, there was no road here then, and for a rocket battery dragged by mules, this would have been very difficult terrain for them to navigate. Suddenly some vedettes appeared from up on the escarpment there, saying the Zulus were everywhere. If they wanted fun, go up the top of that hill and they would find them. Major Russell tried to deploy his rocket battery up here. He went ahead and had a look. He saw them and came back down saying, "Action front." Scary enough having a cow charge towards you around here. So just by the entrance into the park at Isandlwana, you've got the Zulu Memorial, and then you've also got this buffalo thorn tree, which is spiritually quite important to the Zulu people and is often planted where Zulus have died away from home. So probably like many people when they first come to Isandlwana, I used to think the bulk of the fighting was fought down in front of the mountain where the camp was, but actually the firing line was up there, and that's where the majority of the infantrymen spent most of their day, right up until that bloody, brutal end of the battle. So about 600 metres northwest of the camp, there's the memorial to the Royal Artillery, to N Battery 5th Brigade Royal Artillery to be exact. I hadn't realised until looking at the names quite how many of them were killed here. So I'm now stood on what's known as Rocky Ridge. On the day of the battle, this was essentially the right flank of the British line, and it was held by Pope's company of the 2nd Battalion 24th. It was a big company because it was all the men of the 2nd Battalion who hadn't left with Lord Chelmsford that morning. As you can see, it makes a decent natural bastion and was a good place to anchor the right flank. So just here on the Rocky Ridge are the first of these white painted stone cairns. And I think, it seems to me, what happened is, as they were on the right flank and Durnford's men down there by the Donga started to fall back, they realised the Zulus were coming in behind them. As they tried to fall back on the camp, the Zulus got in amongst them, and inevitably a number of men were killed. So I've never noticed before, but slightly southeast of the mountain, up on Black's Copy, this hill, it looks like there's an old public toilet here. It seems to have gone to rack and ruin. I'm not quite sure what the story is there. So people often say things like, so why didn't Talehane form a received cavalry square right at the beginning? Well, because hindsight is 20/20, and at no point during those early stages of the battle would Talehane have realised the camp was in any sort of danger. You know, the 1st Battalion 24th Regiment of Foot were more than capable of holding their own. Also, the British Army doesn't encourage a defensive mindset, especially against a native population armed with short stabbing spears and shields. Violence of action is encouraged, and Talehane knew that. So just put yourself in Tolane's shoes for a minute. Imagine at the first hint of a Zulu attack, he'd struck the tents, formed square, and hoped for the best. That wouldn't have gone down well with Lord Chelmsford. So the final death knell for the British force here at Isandlwana was when their flank was turned, when Durnford and his Natal native horse were forced back from their defensive position along the Donga back there, short on ammunition. They fell back here into the camp, and from then on it was only a matter of time until the battle was finally lost. So by mid-afternoon, the battle was as good as lost for the British, but they weren't going to give up, they were going to keep fighting. And the remnants of the 1st 24th came down here from the wagon park and formed square around this area where all these white cairns mark the dead. But low on ammunition, struggling across the broken ground and realising their way back to Rorke's Drift was blocked by the right horn, the square began to break up. It was a brutal fight, bayonet against assegai, but the ground was too broken, numbers were too few to hold out for too long. Lieutenant Anstey, who commanded the east face of the square, tried to lead a breakout with 60 men along what's now known as Fugitives Trail. He could see that the right horn were blocking his direct route to Rorke's Drift, and they veered off this way towards the Manzinyama River. Imagine retreating along this narrow trail, men coming at you from all sides, jumping down from these boulders. You're outnumbered, you're surrounded, and you're trying to fight your way back to safety you're unlikely to find. I've refound the trail. I'd lost it, but it looks like I went up that hill behind those trees when I should have been going down here. Let me just explore, see if I can find the Manzinyama fairly quickly. I think I'm right in saying that this sort of donga here is where the 2 artillery pieces were finally lost. It's amazing that they got this far, really, given the heavy carriages they had. So after a long walk along the Fugitives Trail, I've reached the Manzinyama River and the spot where the 40 or so survivors who were with Lieutenant Anstey met their fate. They'd managed to work their way down here in a form of ragged square, shoulder to shoulder, fighting off the enemy. But here, they realised they couldn't get any further. They fought their last and they died like men.